She has always been the constant in my life. The laughter at the riverbank, the shoulder in my darkest nights, the silence that understood me better than words. Back then, I didn't have the words for what I felt. I only knew that every time she smiled at me across the mango grove, the world stilled. Years later, I would learn the word for it, but in Nakuru, that word would become the heaviest secret I'd ever carry. Chapter 1. She's been daring me into trouble since the day we met. The kind of trouble that starts with climbing trees and ends with breaking rules no one in our town forgives. At 6, we were crownless queens, sticky with mango juice, already defying the world. She pointed at the forbidden tree clawing at the sky. "Climb," she ordered, and of course I did. I always did. Ours was a friendship stitched in mismatched threads. She would fearlessly leap into rivers while I lingered on the bank. And when storms split the night sky in our teenage years, she would tap at my window, slip under my blanket, and steady my fear with nothing more than her nearness. Back then, I thought it was only friendship. Now I know better. Everyone in Kobo, our small village in Nakuru, knew us. The tomboy and the lady, always side by side. Some shook their heads, saying I would soften her. Others whispered she would harden me. Neither was true. She didn't make me less of who I was. She made me more. By 13, though, our differences became harder to ignore. I learned to glide in dresses and carry myself like my mother taught me, while she grew restless in hand-me-down skirts, preferring shorts and shirts that left her free to run. But when we were together, it didn't matter. I remember one night under the harvest moon, perched high in the mango tree. She leaned close, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. Her touch lingered, her thumb grazing my cheek. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just her eyes. Fierce, unflinching, impossibly gentle. I almost said it. Whatever it was, but an ant's voice called from the path, laughter carrying up through the leaves. We scrambled down, cheeks hot, pretending nothing had happened. That night I lay awake, my skin still tingling where she had touched me. Back then, I didn't have the language. Love, desire, longing, too big, too dangerous. What I knew was this. Losing her would feel like losing the sun itself. In Nakuru, childhood ends the moment people start asking when you'll marry. By 19, the questions hung heavy. A good girl found a good man. That was the way, but nothing about her, nothing about us, ever fit neatly into the way. Looking back now, I see those years as the beginning of everything. The laughter, the silences, the secrets carved into bark and buried in our chests. We thought forever was ours for the taking. We didn't yet know the price. Chapter 2. At 21, I left Nakuru for Mombasa. I told myself it was only for work. A good opportunity, my mother said. The kind of respectable job that would let me send money home, and one day marry into a life where the dust of village roads wouldn't cling to my shoes. But years have a way of shifting you. Mombasa polished me, pressed me into neat lines and clean edges. I learned to walk in heels across cobbled streets, to balance files under one arm while holding my head high, to speak in offices where men measured your worth by how well you smiled and nodded. Still, in the quietest hours I would think of her, barefoot in the fields, sunburnt shoulders, laughter loud enough to rattle the sky. She never bent for anyone's rules, not even mine. And now, after all those years, here I was again. Nakuru spread before me like a faded photograph. The red earth roads, the smell of wood smoke, the mango trees bowing heavy as if no time had passed at all. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She was waiting by the roadside where the matatu stopped, hands shoved into the pockets of worn jeans, a checked shirt rolled to the elbows. Her hair was cropped shorter now, her frame leaner, stronger. She stood like someone who had grown into the land itself, unshaken, unmovable. When her eyes found mine, it was like being 6 years old again, slipping from a branch and trusting she would catch me. "You've changed," she said, grinning, though her eyes roamed over me with something quieter, something I couldn't name. "And you haven't," I teased, smoothing the folds of my dress. But the truth was she had changed. She carried herself with a gravity that made me feel like a stranger, even as my heart leapt at the sight of her. We walked back through the familiar roads, our steps out of sync at first. then falling into the old rhythm as if our bodies remembered what our minds had tried to forget. She told me about the farm, her father's health failing, her days filled with work that left her muscles aching, but her spirit unbowed. I told her about Mombasa, the endless noise, the salt air, the way the city could make you feel both invisible and exposed all at once. "You look polished," she said finally, eyes flicking over my neat braids, my pressed dress, my shoes that were already dust-stained. "And you look like you wrestle bulls for a living," I shot back. Her laugh was the same, reckless, untamed, and it struck me how much I had missed it. By the time we reached the riverbank, the sun was low, staining the water gold. We stood in silence, watching the ripples catch fire in the light. It felt like no time had passed, and yet, everything had. I wanted to tell her how strange it felt to be home, how the city had filled me with a kind of loneliness no noise could drown out. I wanted to tell her that in all those years, I had never found anyone who understood me the way she did in silence. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, she picked up a flat stone and skipped it across the water. "Still remember?" she asked. I tried, failed, and she laughed again, bumping her shoulder into mine the way she always had. And in that small, careless gesture, I felt it, the old tether pulling tight. Yet beneath it ran something heavier. A current I dared not name. She hadn't changed, not in the ways that mattered. But I had, and I wondered, standing by the riverbank with dust on my polished shoes, whether there was still room in her world for the girl I had become. Chapter 3. The late afternoon sun slants golden over the fields. The path is familiar, but the silence between us is not. Ayo, still the tomboy, Ayo, loose shirt, mud-scuffed boots, hair curling rebelliously into her eyes, keeps stealing glances at me. And I keep pretending not to notice. We talk about small things. The weather, the neighbor's mischievous goats, the boda riders who now outnumber bicycles. It should feel ordinary, yet it doesn't. Every brush of her arm against mine is charged, like flint against steel. At the riverbank, where the papyrus still grows thick, we stop. Our secret place. As girls, we used to come here carrying mangoes, dipping our toes into the cool water, whispering secrets we promised never to tell. Now, standing here as women, the air feels heavier, swollen with the words we're not saying. "You've changed," she says suddenly, eyes fixed on the water. "How?" I ask, wary. Your voice is softer. "Like the city sanded down your edges." A pause, then quieter. "But you're still you." I want to laugh it off, but my throat tightens. Still me, the girl who once thought her feelings for Ayo were just a silly phase, something to bury under studies, ambitions, and men who never felt enough. The moment stretches. She steps closer, close enough that I can see the flecks of amber in her brown eyes. My heart is pounding, stupid and reckless. I don't lean in, neither does she. Instead, she picks up a pebble and flicks it into the river, the splash breaking the spell. But when she turns back, her smile is small and raw, and for the first time in years, I see something vulnerable in her, a crack in her armor. Later, walking home, we pass by the church. The choir is practicing, voices rising like smoke, pure and insistent. My stomach twists. I can already imagine the whispers, the judgment, if anyone ever guessed what was beginning to bloom again between us. Ayo must sense it too. She slows, her expression shuddered. "They'll never understand," she murmurs. "Who?" I ask, though I already know. "Everyone." The word lands heavy between us. Everyone. Family, neighbors, church elders, a whole community built on expectation, and yet, as her hand brushes mine in the fading light, I don't pull away. Chapter 4. Sundays in Nakuru are loud. Church bells, the crackle of radios spilling out gospel hymns. By evening, though, the chaos soften into family dinners. My mother insists, no matter how busy anyone is, that Sunday is for gathering. Tonight, I am the guest of honor, the daughter that has just returned. The table groans with ugali, sukuma wiki, goat stew fragrant with coriander, familiar comfort. But my comfort frays the moment I see him. Daniel Mwangi. Tall, neat, with that steady, earnest smile he's perfected since we were teenagers. His family and mine go way back. His father supplied ours with fertilizer. His mother and mine still gossip over tea. I knew he worked in Mombasa, but I didn't expect him here. My mother beams like she's orchestrated the surprise. "Daniel heard you were home and insisted on joining us," she says, ladling stew into my bowl as though sealing my fate. Ayo sits across from me, her expression unreadable, though her fork stills for a heartbeat before she resumes eating. To anyone else, it's nothing. To me, it's thunder. The conversation flows around us. The price of land, a cousin's wedding, politics. Daniel laughs easily, his eyes lingering on me too long, and my family laps it up. The perfect match. The kind of man who would make everything easier, respectable, safe. I keep sneaking glances at Ayo, her shoulders set, jaw tight, gaze fixed on her plate. The invisible thread between us stretches taut, nearly unbearable. After dinner, when everyone gathers in the sitting room, Daniel sits beside me, a little too close. His cologne is sharp, unfamiliar, and suddenly I am drowning in it. He asks about my work in Mombasa, about the future. He says things like, "When you settle down," and "You must be thinking about starting a family." My mother's smile from across the room is approving, hopeful. I nod and answer politely, but my mind is elsewhere. On Ayo, silent in the corner, sipping her tea, pretending she doesn't notice, but I know she feels this knife as sharply as I do. Later, when the guests finally leave, I step out into the cool night. Ayo is waiting by the gate. Her voice is low, steady, but her eyes betray her. "So, Daniel." "It wasn't my idea," I say quickly. "Doesn't matter." She shrugs, too casual. "Your family adores him. They probably already have the wedding colors picked out." The bitterness in her tone slices through me. I reach for her arm. She doesn't pull away, but she doesn't lean in either. We're suspended, the air crackling between us, heavier than the dark clouds gathering above the Rift Valley hills. Finally, she exhales, shaking her head. "Just be careful. They'll never forgive you for choosing otherwise." She walks away before I can answer, her silhouette swallowed by the night, and I am left standing at the gate, torn between two worlds, the safe one laid out for me like a neatly arranged meal, and the dangerous, irresistible one that tastes like freedom. Chapter 5. One morning, a few days later, the rain pours suddenly, the way it always does in Nakuru. One moment sunlight is blazing over the hills, the next, a curtain of gray pouring down hard enough to blur the world. I duck beneath the overhang of Ayo's workshop. My shoes already soaked, dress clinging to my skin. She's there, sleeves rolled to her elbows, oil smudged faintly on her hands from fixing a neighbor's maize sheller machine. She grins when she sees me, but the smile falters when she notices the shiver I can't hide. "Come inside before you catch something." Her voice is brisk, practical, but when she drapes an old shawl around my shoulders, her touch lingers just a fraction too long. We sit on low stools, the rain hammering the corrugated iron roof, the world reduced to just us. I should say something light, something safe. Instead, what slips out is, "Sometimes I feel like I don't belong anywhere. Not here, not in Mombasa, not even in my own skin." Ayo looks at me sharply, like she's seeing past my words to the hollow underneath. She sets her tools aside and leans forward. "You've always belonged. Even when you left, you were still mine." The word hangs there, mine, raw and dangerous. I should laugh, change the subject, but my chest tightens, my throat too full. Her hand finds mine, rough from years of work, warm against my cold fingers. She doesn't let go. Instead, she squeezes, steady, like she's trying to anchor me back into myself. And suddenly, the air between us isn't air at all. It's fire. My pulse races, my breath stutters. She leans in slightly, just enough that the distance between us feels like a cliff edge. If I moved a fraction, if she did, we'd fall. The sound of footsteps outside slices the moment apart. Voices. 2 neighbors running past to escape the rain. Ayo pulls back quickly, dropping my hand as if burned. I sit frozen. the heat of her palm still branded into mine. Chapter 6. The days after the rainstorm are marked by absence. Ayo doesn't come by the house. She doesn't walk me to the market. When I pass her workshop, she looks busy, head bent low over her work, as if the sight of me would break something she's holding together. I tell myself it's better this way, that it was only the rain, only the moment. But each night, lying in my old bed, the sound of her laugh haunts me, the warmth of her hand lingering like a phantom touch I can't shake. And then there's Daniel. He begins showing up more often, always polite, always well-timed. A knock at the door with fresh bread from the bakery, a ride offered into town, so I don't have to walk. He asks about my work in Mombasa, my position at the firm, his tone careful but laced with curiosity. I sense what he really wants to know. Are you respectable? Are you wife material? Will my family approve? The truth is, reputation is everything. In Mombasa, in Nakuru, in every corner where eyes watch too closely. A woman who falters, who whispers against expectation, is branded careless, dangerous, unfit. And the thought of that shadow falling over me, over my work, my independence, makes my stomach clench with fear. So I smile when Daniel speaks. I nod when my mother beams at his attention. I let him walk beside me to church, though every step feels like I'm drifting further from where I belong. But when his hand brushes mine in the crowded street, I flinch. He notices. His eyes narrow, puzzled, but he says nothing. That night, I find myself walking without thought, feet carrying me to the riverbank. Our place, the papyrus sways. The water glitters faintly under the moon, and there she is, Ayo, sitting on the rocks, as if she knew I would come. For a moment, neither of us speaks. Then softly, "You've been avoiding me." She doesn't deny it. Better that way. Better for who? My voice cracks, her gaze meets mine, steady, fierce. For you. For your future. You've worked too hard to let whispers destroy you. I should agree. Instead, the ache in my chest sharpens into something unbearable. I want to tell her the truth. That the only whispers I fear are the ones in my own heart, the ones that whisper her name when I'm alone. But the words die on my tongue, because saying them out loud would set fire to everything. So I sit beside her in silence, our shoulders inches apart, the night air thick with everything unsaid. And for the first time, I understand why silence can be the loudest confession of all. Chapter 7. I tell myself I'm too busy with keeping the community's expectations tidy around me, with dodging my mother's questions about Daniel. But the lie phrase every time Ayo's laughter echoes in my head long after we've parted, or when I catch her eyes softening on me in a way that feels like a confession neither of us dares voice. Daniel, of course, only sharpens the tension. He has become a shadow in every room. Polite, persistent, the son of my family's friends. A doctor, ambitious, respectable, everything I am supposed to want. My colleagues in Mombasa already joke about when the wedding is, as if my reputation is knotted up with how quickly I let him claim me. The thought makes my throat tighten. But what am I supposed to say? That my heart isn't available because it belongs to someone I can't name aloud? So Ayo and I avoid each other. Not entirely, but enough to keep the air raw between us. A half step back when our shoulders nearly brush. Shorter visits. Polite laughter where once there were unguarded silences. The distance is its own form of intimacy, aching and unbearable. Until tonight. It is late when I find myself at her doorstep, rain clinging to my shawl. I tell myself I've come to return a book she left at my place, but the excuse dies as soon as she opens the door. Her shirt clings damp to her skin, hair tousled from sleep, and she looks at me like she knew I would come even before I knocked. The silence stretches. Neither of us moves. The world outside is hushed by the rain, as though holding its breath with us. I should leave. I should say goodnight, that I'll see her tomorrow, that Daniel will be waiting, that my career can't risk whispers. Instead, I step inside. She doesn't stop me. Her living room is dim, the lamp throwing shadows across the walls. We sit too close on the edge of the sofa, pretending to discuss the book, pretending not to notice how our knees brush, how the air between us grows heavier with every second. I say something about Daniel, some meaningless detail, how he invited me to a family dinner next week. My voice shakes. Ayo's jaw tightens and she looks away, her fingers curling into fists against her knees. "You don't have to marry him," she says finally, her voice low, rough. Her words strike through me. My pulse stumbles. "It's not that simple." "It is," she insists, turning to me. "You don't want him. You never have." Her gaze pins me there, every secret I've buried rising to the surface. I open my mouth to argue, to deny, to salvage the distance we've so carefully maintained, but then her hand finds mine. Tentative at first, then firm, as though she's anchoring herself to me. The world tilts. I don't know who moves first. I only know that suddenly our mouths collide, desperate and reckless. The weeks of restraint combusting in an instant. Her lips are warm, urgent, tasting of rain and something I've longed for so fiercely it hurts. My hands clutch at her shirt, pulling her closer, and she responds with a hunger that terrifies me with its truth. It is a kiss born not of safety, but defiance. Of every no we've ever bitten back, of every time we've let silence win. When we finally pull apart, breathless, I press my forehead against hers. The room spins. The storm outside rages on. "This can't happen," I whisper, though my lips are still trembling from wanting more. "It already did," she answers, and her voice is both fierce and broken, and in that moment, I know nothing will ever be the same. Chapter 8. The kiss hangs between us like smoke after a fire, the kind that lingers in clothes and hair, no matter how many times you wash. I wake with the memory of her mouth still pressed against mine, the ache of her grip still on my shirt. And the guilt, always the guilt. For 2 days we don't speak. I busy myself with work, with avoiding questions, with Daniel's insistent calls I half ignore. But every silence feels louder now, every room emptier. Ayo must feel it too. I can sense her absence like a phantom limb. It isn't sustainable. Small-town life is like a trap in that way. Too many eyes, too many errands that wind us back into each other's paths. I see her at the market, her hands full of tomatoes, the sun catching the sweat on her brow. She sees me, and in that single glance, the memory floods us both. We don't speak beyond a strained hello, but my heart pounds all the way home. Later, it's a family errand that forces us together, helping carry supplies back from the shops. Our hands brush on the same sack of flour, and we both flinch as if burned. She laughs it off, but the sound is brittle, like glass about to shatter. The avoidance breaks one evening, quietly. I find her at the riverbank, seated on the old rock where we used to talk about the future, the one we imagined would always include each other. The water ripples silver in the moonlight. She doesn't turn when I sit beside her. "You've been running from me," she says. Her voice is calm, but the accusation lies sharp underneath. "And you from me," I reply. The silence between us is so heavy it feels alive. Then, as if drawn by some invisible current, I reach for her hand. She doesn't pull away. The warmth of her skin against mine feels like both confession and absolution. She leans in first this time. The kiss is different, not the reckless fury of the last, but slow, deliberate. Acclaiming. I melt into it, my fingers tightening around hers as the world slips away. When we part, I whisper, "We shouldn't." She studies me, her dark eyes steady in the moonlight. "Then why does it feel like we've been waiting our whole lives for this?" I don't answer. I can't. But others begin to notice. It starts with small remarks. My aunt joking that Ayo and I are joined at the hip, a neighbor raising her brows when she spots us walking too close. The words sting in ways they shouldn't. After all, haven't we always been close? But something in the tone tells me it's different now. They see something we're trying to hide. Daniel, of course, is relentless. He calls more often, stops by unannounced. Last week, he asked me to join him for Sunday service and lunch with his parents. "A step forward," he called it, smiling as though we were already halfway engaged. I stammered through an excuse, but I know I can't dodge him forever. My mother beams whenever his name comes up. My colleagues in Mombasa speak of him like he's already my husband. And then there's Ayo, watching me with that fire in her eyes whenever his name slips into conversation. She doesn't say it, but I can feel the storm brewing in her. We exist now in two lives. By day, we play the roles expected of us. Dutiful daughter, respectable friend, almost fiancé. By night, when the world finally leaves us alone, we collapse into the truth. Hands clasped in the dark, whispered jokes only we understand. The press of her lips against mine when no one is watching. I know it can't last. Rumors already curl like smoke at the edges of our secret. Daniel is pressing in. My mother is watching closely. And through it all, the flame we try to hide only burns hotter. Chapter 9. The pressure builds slowly, like water simmering just below a boil. Everyone seems to have a stake in my future these days. My mother, my colleagues, even the neighbors who've decided that Daniel and I are the story worth telling. Daniel himself is the worst of it. He's not unkind. That would almost be easier. No, he's warm, attentive, polite in all the right ways. He remembers the little things, like how I take my tea or which books I like to read, and he wraps it all in that steady smile of his. Any woman would be lucky, my mother keeps saying. Lucky. As if luck has anything to do with a heart that doesn't beat for him. The trouble is, Daniel doesn't seem to notice that part. Or maybe he refuses to. One Sunday after service, he catches my hand before I can slip away. His grip is firm, possessive without meaning to be. He calls out to my mother, to the neighbors clustered near the gate, to Ayo, who freezes at the edge of the crowd, her arms crossed, her gaze unreadable. Everyone, Daniel begins, his voice carrying too easily in the still air. I want you to know I'm serious about her. This, he lifts my hand slightly. This is the woman I intend to marry. A ripple moves through the crowd, murmurs, approving nods, my mother's beaming smile. My stomach twists. My hand feels like it's trapped in his, my voice caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Ayo. Her jaw clenches, her eyes hard as stone. She doesn't move, doesn't say a word, but the force of her silence is louder than anything else. Later, away from the crowd, I try to explain. He caught me off guard, I tell her. I didn't agree to anything, didn't you? Her voice is sharp, brittle. You stood there. You let him say it. You let them believe it. What was I supposed to do? Humiliate him in front of everyone? In front of my mother? You were supposed to choose yourself. Her words strike like a slap. Or is it him you're choosing? I reach for her, but she steps back. The distance between us feels like a chasm. That night, I lie awake replaying it all. Daniel's hand around mine, the approving hum of the crowd, Ayo's silence like a storm building on the horizon. My chest aches with the impossible choice pressing in from all sides. Family duty, professional respectability, the lie of safety. Or Ayo, and deep down, I already know which one I want. But wanting and surviving are never the same thing. Chapter 10. Her breath still tastes like the last stolen laugh between us, warm and heady, when Ayo's lips claim mine again. This kiss is different. Hungrier, deeper, carrying all the unspoken words we can't risk saying aloud. Her mouth moves against mine with a sureness that makes my knees weaken, every sweep of her tongue unraveling me until I forget where I end and she begins. My thoughts scatter like startled birds. All I know is the press of her against me, the velvet slide of her mouth that makes my mind collapse into a blur of sensation. When she nips my lower lip, a sound escapes me, something low, unguarded, and Ayo swallows it like a secret. Her hand moves with a slowness that makes my pulse thunder in my ears. At first it rests innocently at my hip, her thumb brushing the thin fabric of my dress, but then it drifts, fingers skimming down and curling under the hem. The brush of her knuckles against my thigh sends a jolt through me, heat on skin, sharp and electric. She doesn't rush. She doesn't need to. Each inch upward is deliberate, a question and a claim at once. My breath stutters as she trails higher, the rough pads of her fingers grazing sensitive skin, pulling goosebumps in their wake. Ayo, I whisper, half a warning, half a plea, though I can't even tell which part of me wants her to stop, and which part would burn the world to ashes if she did. Her lips break from mine only long enough to murmur against the curve of my jaw. "Tell me to stop." Her breath is hot, teasing, almost smug, because she knows I won't, and I don't. Instead, I tilt my head, giving her more of me, clinging to her shoulders as if she's the only solid thing in a world spinning out of control. My dress has ridden up higher now, her palm warm against my bare thigh, every stroke pulling me deeper into this reckless, forbidden heat. The room seems to shrink, air thick with want. The sound of my own heartbeat drowns out everything else, until even that feels distant compared to the raw, consuming pull of her touch, and the way her mouth devours every last coherent thought. Ayo's mouth is fire, and I'm already ash. Every kiss she gives me is ruinous, stripping thought from bone until all that's left is need. When she pulls me closer, her thigh pressing between mine, the world narrows to her lips, her breath, her heat. I gasp when her hand slips under the hem of my dress, fingers grazing skin that has never known such boldness. Her palm rests on my thigh, warm, firm, inching higher with devastating patience. My breath stutters, every nerve taut, every instinct screaming yes, even as my conscience claws at the edges, whispering no. "Ayo," I murmur, my voice trembling between warning and surrender. "Tell me to stop." She breathes against my neck, her lips brushing the words into me, as if daring me to find the will. But I can't. Instead, I arch toward her touch, every shred of reason burning to cinders in her hands. She drags her thumb higher, the edge of her touch grazing places that make my body light up. And for one perilous moment, I am ready to let the earth crack open beneath us if it means I get to stay in her arms a second longer. Then, the door slams. "Ayo?" Daniel's voice slices the air like a blade, shattering the cocoon of heat and shadows. I jolt, shoving Ayo back, but the damage is done. My dress is still bunched high around my thighs, my lips swollen, breathless. Ayo's eyes flash wide, caught between defiance and guilt. Daniel stands frozen in the doorway, his face a storm, eyes dark, mouth curled in something between disbelief and rage. The silence is louder than any shout. Chapter 11. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't curse. He didn't even give me the dignity of anger. He only stared. At me, at Ayo, at the terrible closeness of us, before turning on his heel and storming off. His silence hit harder than any words could. The slam of the gate was like a verdict passed. At first, I clung to hope that maybe he would bury what he saw, that maybe his pride, his family's reputation, would make him lock the secret away. But Daniel was too much his mother's son, and gossip is a currency no family can resist spending. By the next morning, whispers threaded the air like smoke. At the market, 2 women paused mid-haggle to watch me walk by. At the village self-service store, people lowered their voices when I entered, their smiles too tight, their warmth too thin. The walls of Kobo seemed suddenly smaller, every glance a mirror reflecting what I feared I'd become. A woman unraveling, her secret spilling into the dust, and then came my family. "Daniel is a good man," my mother said, her voice trembling not with anger but with disappointment, a sound that broke me worse than fury would have. "He has stood by our family for years. People are asking questions now, and you toy with shame." She wouldn't look at me as she said it, her hands twisted in her lap, wringing themselves as though trying to strangle the truth. My uncle was less restrained. "Your future depends on your choices. Reputation is everything, girl. Everything. Do you want to end as the cautionary tale told at weddings? The one who had prospects, then squandered them chasing sin and shadows? Shadows. As if Ayo was some phantom I'd conjured out of loneliness, but Ayo was flesh and blood. And Ayo, too, was bleeding under the weight of it. Her family cornered her one evening as I walked her home. Her aunt spat the words like stones. "You think we don't see? You think people are blind? That girl will ruin you. Do you want to die alone, ashamed to your father's name?" I saw Ayo flinch, her jaw tight, her fists clenched. But she said nothing until later, when we finally found the dark safety of her room. There, the dam broke. "This is what I was afraid of," I whispered, pacing, unable to stay still. My voice shook with the panic clawing at my throat. "We've been reckless, Ayo. God, if Daniel saw, He did see, she cut in, her tone sharp, brittle with exhaustion. And you know what? I don't care. Don't care. My laugh came out jagged, humorless. My family is calling me a disgrace. My career is on the line. You think I can just shrug and pretend it doesn't matter? Her eyes burned. So what then? You'd rather marry Daniel? Be the good little daughter they want? The respectable woman with a dead heart? The words struck deep because she knew that part of me wanted exactly that. The safe path, the one paved with approval, with belonging. But safe paths rarely lead to truth. Tears stung my eyes, hot and humiliating. You don't understand what I stand to lose. And you don't understand, she snapped back, voice cracking, that I've loved you since the riverbanks, since mango trees and secret laughter. I've already lost too much pretending otherwise. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Between us stood the question neither of us could dodge anymore. Was love worth the wreckage it would bring? I turned away first, afraid that if I kept looking at her, I would break completely. The air between us felt final, like the last page of a book left unread. That night, for the first time since my return, I considered leaving Kobo. Leaving Nakuru. Leaving her. Because perhaps the only way to save what little I had left was to lose the one thing I wanted most. Chapter 12. The days that followed were a blur of silence and noise. Noise from the community, the whispers louder now, less disguised. Men laughing too hard when I passed, women clicking their tongues, pity and judgment wrapped into one sharp sound. My mother barely spoke to me except in clipped questions. When will you see Daniel? Each word was less about me and more about repairing what could not be repaired. I told myself to let go. To keep away, silence the part of me that longed for Ayo. To walk the path laid out. Marriage, respectability, safety. It would be easier, cleaner. But when night fell, my thoughts always betrayed me, circling back to her laugh, her touch, her presence carved into me like breath itself. But distance does not erase truth. One evening, the need to breathe dragged me to the riverbank, the place that had always been ours. Childhood sanctuary, youth secret, love's battlefield. She was there, waiting, as if the same gravity had pulled her too. You shouldn't be here, I whispered, though my heart leapt at the sight of her. Her gaze held mine, steady, unflinching. Neither should you. We stood in the dimming light, the silence between us louder than the cicadas. Then she stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth of her body. I can't let them decide for us, she said, voice low and raw. Not anymore. Fear and longing warred inside me. Ayo, if we do this, if we keep choosing each other, we could lose everything. Her hand found mine, fingers lacing with certainty. Or we finally live. When her lips found mine, it was not reckless like before. It was steady, deliberate. The kiss of someone who had weighed the cost and chosen anyway. My mind melted, yes, but this time into resolve, not just heat. The world could burn around us. But in that moment, I knew I would walk through fire for her. We pulled apart at the sound of footsteps on the path. A figure passing, too close, too curious. We froze, breathless, knowing rumors could ignite from even a glance. But she didn't let go of my hand, and I didn't pull away. We stood in plain sight, hearts pounding, the weight of Nakuru pressing down on us. But for once, we didn't hide. The future stretched before us, terrifying and uncertain. Maybe we would leave, maybe we would stay, maybe we would be broken, maybe we would endure. But for the first time, I felt it. The possibility of a world not yet here, a Kenya not yet ready. But one day, and in the soft darkness by the river, with Ayo's hand still warm in mine, I chose to believe we might live to see it. Liked this? Every heartbeat in Africa tells a story. Subscribe to feel it.